My boyfriend's parents belittled me for being a photographer and insisted on a prenup to protect their family fortune. Their smug expressions vanished when I opened my portfolio showing celebrity clients and mentioned my last year's income. Okay, so get this. I'm sitting here, glass of wine in hand, trying to process the absolute circus my life has become. You know those moments when reality feels like a badly written soap opera? Yeah, that's been my entire week. I've rewritten this post like 5 times already because I still can't believe this is happening to me. I'm Zoe, 28, and until recently, I thought I had it all figured out. I've spent the last 5 years busting my ass to build a career as a professional photographer. And not just any photographer. I specialize in celebrity portraits and high-end fashion shoots. It's been a wild ride, full of 3 a.m. editing sessions, networking events, where I wanted to hide in the bathroom, and more rejected pitches than I care to remember. I started out doing wedding photography on weekends, while working at a coffee shop to pay rent. My tiny apartment doubled as a makeshift studio, with one wall painted white and cheap lights I bought secondhand. I lived on ramen and determination. Every penny I earned went straight back into equipment. Better lenses, lighting setups, editing software. I remember crying when I finally saved enough to buy my first professional grade camera. It cost 3 months' rent, but it was worth every penny. My break came when a friend's cousin needed headshots for her acting portfolio. She loved them so much she recommended me to her agent, who then connected me with a small indie magazine. One job led to another, and slowly but surely, I built a reputation. Now I've got a solid client base, a growing reputation, and last year I even managed to crack 6 figures. Not by a yacht money, but enough to make me feel like all those sleepless nights were worth it. Enter Ethan. We met 2 years ago at a charity gala where I was the official photographer. Picture this. I'm adjusting my camera settings, trying to ignore the fact that my feet are killing me in these ridiculous heels. Why do photographers always wear black? It shows every speck of dust. When I hear this voice behind me, "Excuse me, but I think you dropped this." I turn around and there's this tall drink of water holding out my lens cap. Now, I'd like to say I had some witty response, but the truth is I just stood there like an idiot, mouth probably hanging open. Ethan has this whole Clark Kent thing going on, sharp jawline, kind eyes behind stylish glasses, and a smile that could melt polar ice caps. "Thanks," I managed to say, taking the cap from him. "I'd lose my head if it wasn't attached." "Then the world would be deprived of your talent," he replied, nodding toward my camera. "I've been watching you work. You have an incredible eye." We ended up talking for hours after the event. I was supposed to be packing up my equipment, but instead found myself perched on a bar stool, laughing at his stories and forgetting all about my aching feet. Turns out Ethan's a software engineer for a startup that develops apps for nonprofits. Smart, funny, and actually gives a damn about making the world better. I was smitten. Our first date was at this hole-in-the-wall ramen place downtown. He showed up with a vintage film camera he'd found at a flea market, thinking I might like it. I did. That camera sits on my bookshelf now, a reminder of how thoughtful he can be when he's not being completely infuriating. For the first year, everything was perfect. We'd spend weekends exploring the city, finding little spots for me to photograph. He'd patiently wait while I got just one more shot of a sunset or an interesting storefront. I'd listen to him geek out about coding languages I didn't understand. We built a life together, piece by piece. My cramped apartment slowly filled with his books and hoodies. His place accumulated my camera equipment and prints. Fast forward to 6 months ago. Ethan proposed during a weekend getaway to this cute little B&B upstate. It wasn't some over-the-top production, just us, a bottle of wine, and the most heartfelt speech I've ever heard. "Zoe," he said, voice shaking slightly as he reached for my hand across the table. "You know I'm not great with words, not like you are with images. But I've been trying to figure out how to tell you that you've completely changed my life. Before you, I saw the world in code and algorithms. You taught me to see beauty in unexpected places." He pulled out a small velvet box. Inside was a vintage-style emerald ring surrounded by tiny diamonds. "It reminded me of your eyes," he explained, looking nervous. "And the lady at the jewelry store said emeralds symbolize growth and new beginnings. I thought that was appropriate, since every day with you feels like a new adventure." I said yes before he even finished asking the question. We spent the rest of the weekend in a happy bubble, making love and talking about our future. He wanted a small backyard wedding. I dreamed of honeymooning somewhere I could photograph ancient architecture. We talked about how many kids we might want someday, where we'd live, all those wonderful plans you make when you're drunk on love and possibility. Everything was perfect. We started planning a small fall wedding, just close friends and family. I was so caught up in the bliss that I completely missed the red flags waving right in front of my face. See, despite being together for almost 2 years, I'd only met Ethan's parents twice. Both times were brief encounters at public events. The first was at a charity auction where I was taking photos. Ethan introduced me quickly, and his mother, Vivian, gave me a polite but distant smile, while his father, Oliver, barely looked up from his phone. The second time was at a restaurant where we happened to run into them. The interaction lasted maybe 5 minutes, with awkward small talk about the weather and food. Ethan always had some excuse when I suggested visiting them. Dad's traveling for work, or Mom's redecorating the house, or they're spending the month at their place in the Hamptons. I should have pushed harder, but I was too busy being disgustingly in love. Last weekend, Ethan finally suggested we have dinner with his parents at their house in Connecticut. I was nervous but excited. This was my chance to really connect with my future in-laws, right? They want to get to know you better before the wedding, Ethan explained as we drove through increasingly exclusive neighborhoods. Just be yourself. They'll love you. Are you sure? I asked, smoothing down my dress for the 100th time. I'd chosen a conservative navy blue number that I thought screamed responsible adult, rather than my usual vintage finds or casual clothes. What have you told them about me? That you're amazing, he said, squeezing my hand. Creative, passionate, beautiful. Did you tell them what I do for a living? I pressed. Of course, he replied, but something in his voice made me uneasy. They know you're a photographer. Oh, how naive I was. We pulled up to this massive colonial-style house, all white columns and perfectly manicured lawns. I'm talking the kind of place where you're afraid to breathe wrong in case you mess up the feng shui or something. A gardener was meticulously trimming hedges into perfect cubes, and I could see what looked like a pool house behind the main building. You grew up here? I whispered, suddenly feeling very small in my Target clearance rack shoes. It's just a house, Ethan shrugged, but I could see the tension in his shoulders as he parked his modest Prius in the circular driveway, looking out of place among the luxury vehicles already there. Ethan's mom, Vivian, greeted us at the door. Picture a real-life Stepford wife, perfectly coiffed blonde hair, pearls, and a smile so practiced it probably takes her an hour to relax her face at night. She wore what looked like casual attire for her, perfectly pressed cream-colored slacks and a cashmere sweater that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Darling, you made it, she trilled, air-kissing Ethan's cheeks before turning to me. And Zoe, was it? How lovely. I got the barest brush of lips against my cheek before she ushered us inside. The foyer alone was bigger than my entire apartment. Everything was pristine, marble floors, crystal chandelier, and what looked like original artwork on the walls. I instinctively held my purse closer, terrified I might knock over something worth more than my car. Beautiful home, I managed, trying not to gawk at what appeared to be a genuine Monet hanging casually in the hallway. Oh, this old place? Vivian waved dismissively. We've been meaning to renovate. The East Wing is just so drafty in winter. East Wing, of course. Ethan's dad, Oliver, was in what I can only describe as a study straight out of a movie set. Dark wood paneling, leather-bound books lining the walls, and a desk that probably cost more than my car. He barely looked up from his phone as we entered. Son, he nodded at Ethan before giving me a quick once-over. Miss Chen, welcome. Thank you for having me, I said, extending my hand. His handshake was brief and firm, his attention already drifting back to his phone. Oliver has been absolutely swamped with this new merger, Vivian explained, as if his rudeness was perfectly acceptable. Billions on the line, you know how it is. I didn't know how it was, actually, but I nodded politely. Drink? Oliver finally looked up, moving to a crystal decanter set. Scotch, Ethan? And... He paused, looking at me questioningly. White wine would be lovely, thank you, I said. I believe there's some Chardonnay in the kitchen. Vivian, would you mind? Vivian floated away to fetch my evidently less important beverage, while Oliver poured scotch for himself and Ethan from what looked like a bottle that could pay my photography assistant's salary for a month. The next hour was an exercise in awkward small talk. Vivian kept asking Ethan about his work, his friends from prep school, basically anything that didn't involve me. When she did address me, it was always with this tone, like she was talking to a particularly slow child. "So Zoe," she said as we moved to the dining room, a cavernous space with a table that could comfortably seat 20, though it was set for just the 4 of us at one end. "Ethan mentions you take pictures?" I bristled at the phrasing but kept my cool. "Yes, I'm a professional photographer. I specialize in celebrity portraits and fashion photography." "Oh, how quaint," Vivian replied, exchanging a look with Oliver that made my stomach churn. "It must be so exciting to meet famous people. Did you bring your camera tonight? Perhaps you could take a family photo for our Christmas card." I forced a smile. "I'd be happy to schedule a proper portrait session sometime." "That's very kind, but I wouldn't want to impose on your hobby," Vivian said, emphasizing the last word in a way that made it clear she didn't consider photography a real profession. Before I could respond, Oliver chimed in. "Interesting career choice. Not exactly stable, is it? Especially in this economy." I took a deep breath, reminding myself that strangling my future father-in-law would probably put a damper on the wedding plans. "Actually, I've been fortunate enough to build a solid client base. Last year was my best yet, financially speaking." Was Oliver's only response before turning his attention to his steak, which had been served by an actual housekeeper in a uniform. I hadn't even noticed her setting the table. I glanced at Ethan, hoping for some support, but he was suddenly very interested in his mashed potatoes. "The coward." "Ethan tells us you went to state school?" Vivian asked, somehow making it sound like I'd studied at a prison. "UC Berkeley," I confirmed. "They have an excellent visual arts program." "Berkeley," Oliver repeated with a slight sneer. "Rather political campus, isn't it?" "It encourages critical thinking," I replied, struggling to keep my tone neutral. "Our Ethan went to Yale," Vivian said proudly, as if I didn't already know this. "4th generation. His grandfather was a legacy donor. The science building is named after his great-grandfather." "Yes, the Russell Science Center," I nodded. "Ethan's mentioned it." The conversation meandered through various topics, all of which seemed designed to highlight how little I fit into their world. Vivian talked about their recent trip to the Maldives. The private island was divine, though the staff could have been more attentive. Oliver mentioned some business deal that apparently saved his company millions. Simply a matter of recognizing which assets were underperforming. And I sat there feeling increasingly like an alien who'd crash-landed at the wrong dinner party. Throughout dinner, there were subtle digs at my background, mentions of self-made people with tones, suggesting it was a character flaw rather than an achievement. Questions about my family that felt more like interrogations. "And your parents are in retail, correct?" Vivian asked, cutting her steak into precise, tiny pieces. "My mom owns a small bookstore in San Francisco," I explained. "My dad teaches high school chemistry." "How grounding," she replied in a way that clearly meant common. Just when I thought the evening couldn't get any worse, Oliver cleared his throat and dropped the bomb. "Ethan, your mother and I have been thinking. Given the circumstances, we believe it would be prudent to discuss a prenuptial agreement." I nearly choked on my wine. "I'm sorry, what?" Vivian reached across the table to pat my hand, her diamond bracelet catching the light. "Oh, darling, don't take it personally. It's just that the family has certain assets that need protection. I'm sure you understand." "What assets are we talking about exactly?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Well, there's the family trust, of course," Oliver said dismissively. "The summer home in the Hamptons, the ski lodge in Aspen, Ethan's trust fund. Standard things that naturally wouldn't be divided in case of complications." "Complications," I repeated flatly. "Divorces can be so messy," Vivian sighed, as if discussing a mildly unpleasant weather forecast. "Best to have everything in writing beforehand. Our family attorney has already drafted the paperwork. You'll just need to have your lawyer review it." I turned to Ethan, certain he was about to shut this down. Instead, he gave me a weak smile. "It's pretty standard, babe. We can talk about it later." That's when something inside me snapped. All the pent-up frustration from the evening came boiling to the surface. I'd spent the entire dinner being polite while they subtly insulted everything about me, my career, my education, my family, and now this? "Actually," I said, reaching for my phone, "why don't we talk about it now? I'd love to show you some of my work since you seem confused about what I actually do." I pulled up my portfolio app and slid my phone across the table. This editorial spread for Elle? That was a $12,000. The campaign I shot for that luxury skincare brand last month? 25,000. I swiped through more images as they stared, dumbfounded. I made just over 180,000 last year, I continued, taking a deliberate sip of wine. My client list is booked solid for the next 6 months. I have a waiting list of people who want to work with me, so if we're discussing prenups, maybe I should be the one worried about protecting my assets. The dining room fell silent. Vivian's perfect smile had frozen into something that looked almost pained. Oliver was blinking rapidly like a computer trying to reboot. Ethan looked like he might pass out. We had no idea, Vivian stammered, suddenly very interested in rearranging her silverware. Oliver cleared his throat. Well, that's impressive. Ethan never mentioned the scale of your success. I turned to Ethan, anger building. Didn't he? That's strange considering how proud he claimed to be of my career when we met. Ethan had the decency to look ashamed. Zoe, let me guess, I interrupted, unable to stop now that the dam had broken. You told them I was just some struggling artist type? That I was finding myself through photography? Did you mention that I've been published in major magazines? That I've photographed people they probably have framed on their walls? I told them you were a photographer, he mumbled, not meeting my eyes. A photographer, I repeated, not an established professional with a thriving business, just a photographer, like it's a cute hobby I do between serving coffee and waiting for a real job to come along. The rest of dinner was painfully awkward. Oliver tried to salvage his dignity by suddenly becoming interested in photography, asking technical questions he clearly Googled under the table. What's your preferred aperture for portrait work? And do you shoot RAW or JPEG? As if he had any idea what those terms actually meant. Vivian kept complimenting everything from my earrings to my unique perspective on life. She even mentioned a friend who dabbles in photography and suggested we should meet, as if her friend's vacation snapshots were comparable to my professional work. By the time dessert arrived, some pretentious deconstructed tiramisu that looked like it had suffered a tragic accident, I was mentally drafting my exit strategy. Part of me wanted to grab my purse and call an Uber, but I didn't want to give them the satisfaction of seeing me upset. When we finally left, Vivian hugged me with newfound enthusiasm, pressing her cold cheek against mine. We must do this again soon, dear. Perhaps you could photograph us sometime. For a reasonable fee, of course. Oliver's handshake was firmer this time, his eye contact more deliberate. Fascinating evening, Miss Chen. You've certainly given us something to think about. I smiled tightly. Always happy to broaden horizons, Mr. Russell. On the drive home, Ethan had the audacity to be mad at me for embarrassing his parents. Can you believe that? We were barely out of their neighborhood when he exploded. What the hell was that? He demanded, knuckles white on the steering wheel. You didn't have to throw your success in their faces like that. Excuse me? I stared at him in disbelief. They were treating me like some gold digger after their precious family fortune. What was I supposed to do? You could have been more gracious about it. They were just trying to protect me. Protect you? I laughed, though there was no humor in it. From what exactly? The dangerous photographer who makes her own money and doesn't need their trust fund? You don't understand how they are, Ethan said defensively. They've always been protective. No, what I don't understand is why my fiancé let his parents treat me like I'm some kind of fortune hunter without correcting them. Why didn't you tell them about my career? He was quiet for a long moment, focused on the road ahead. Finally, he sighed. I don't know. I guess I wanted them to know the real you, not just your job. My career is part of who I am, Ethan, I shot back. Why have you been hiding that from them? Are you ashamed of what I do? Of course not. They have certain expectations. The more we talked, the clearer it became. Ethan had been downplaying my success to fit some narrative that made him comfortable with his family. When I pressed him further, he admitted that his parents had always expected him to marry someone from their social circle, preferably a nice girl from his prep school alumni network. Someone with the right background, the right connections, the right pedigree. So what am I then? I asked, voice growing quiet with hurt. Your act of rebellion, your way of showing mommy and daddy you make your own decisions? No, I love you, Zoe. I want to marry you. My parents' opinions don't matter. They clearly do matter, or you wouldn't have hidden who I really am from them. That's when it hit me. I was Ethan's rebellion, his way of proving he wasn't completely under his parents' thumb. But he never actually stood up for me. He was playing both sides, appearing independent to me while secretly maintaining his parents' approval by minimizing who I really was. We've been fighting all week. Every conversation circles back to the dinner disaster. He keeps saying I'm overreacting and that his parents were just concerned. He even suggested maybe we should consider that prenup after all, since both of us have assets to protect now. As if their attitude was ever actually about protecting assets, rather than assuming I was after their money. They're not bad people, he insisted last night, as we sat on opposite ends of my couch, the distance between us feeling like miles. They're just old-fashioned. They'll come around. Will they? I asked. Or will I spend the rest of my life trying to prove I'm good enough for their precious son? You're being dramatic, he said, which is exactly the wrong thing to say to someone who feels invalidated. Yesterday, I took a client meeting in the city for a potential big advertising campaign. I'd been excited about this opportunity for weeks. It could mean national exposure and a significant paycheck. But now it felt overshadowed by all this drama with Ethan and his family. The art director they'd hired turned out to be Melody, Ethan's ex from college. Talk about awkward. She was perfectly polite during the meeting, professional even. But as we were wrapping up, she pulled me aside. "So you're Ethan's fiancé," she said, giving me an appraising look. "I've heard a lot about you." "Good things, I hope," I replied, forcing a smile. "Mostly." She hesitated, then added, "Listen, I probably shouldn't say anything, but be careful with the Russells. They can be particular about who joins their family." My stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" Melody mentioned how Ethan's mom still sends her Christmas cards and invites her to family events. Then she said something that made my blood run cold. "Oh, you're the photographer girlfriend? I ran into Vivian at a charity luncheon last month. She mentioned Ethan was going through a creative phase with his dating choices. No offense." A phase? I've spent 2 years building a life with someone who apparently has been telling his family I'm temporary. I haven't confronted Ethan about this yet. Part of me wants to call off the whole wedding, but another part wonders if I'm being too hasty. We've built something together, and when his parents aren't around, he's the guy I fell in love with. The one who brings me coffee in bed on Sunday mornings, who listens to me rant about difficult clients, who holds me when I'm stressed about a big shoot. This morning he sent a text saying his parents want to make amends with a dinner at some exclusive restaurant next weekend. They feel terrible about how things went, he wrote. They want to start fresh. I haven't responded. I keep staring at my engagement ring, wondering if it symbolizes love, or if I'm just a temporary rebellion in Ethan's carefully planned life. Does he really see a future with me, or am I just a detour before he inevitably returns to the path his parents laid out for him? I have a photo shoot in Paris next week for a major fashion magazine. It's a huge opportunity, one I've been working toward for years. They're flying me out, putting me up in a hotel, the whole deal. It should be a moment of triumph, but now it feels like perfect timing to get some space and think. Should I go alone and reevaluate everything, try to work through this with Ethan? Or am I just delaying the inevitable by staying with someone who can't fully embrace who I am? I love Ethan, I really do. When it's just us in our own little world, everything is perfect. He understands my creative process, celebrates my victories, comforts me through rejections. He remembers how I take my coffee, knows when I need space to edit photos, and has never once complained about the ridiculous hours I sometimes keep when I'm on deadline. But now I'm seeing another side of him, the part that's still very much his parents' son, the part that cares about family expectations and social standing, the part that was willing to let his parents believe I was somehow less than I am, rather than proudly telling them about my accomplishments. I've worked too hard to let anyone, even the man I thought I'd spend my life with, diminish my accomplishments or treat me like I'm not good enough. I clawed my way up in a competitive industry. I built my business from nothing. I earned every client, every paycheck, every bit of recognition. So here I am pouring my heart out to strangers on the internet because I don't know what else to do. My friends are divided. Half say run for the hills. The other half think every relationship has hurdles to overcome. My mom, ever practical, asked if I was sure I wanted to deal with these in-laws for the rest of my life. Has anyone dealt with future in-laws like this? Did your partner ever grow a spine and stand up to them? Or am I just setting myself up for a lifetime of being the dirty little secret, the phase that never quite passed? I feel like I'm standing at a crossroads, and whichever path I choose is going to change my life forever. Do I fight for this relationship, hoping Ethan will finally stand up to his parents and fully accept me? Or do I walk away now, before I lose any more of myself trying to fit into a world that clearly doesn't want me? Just writing this has made me realize how much my gut is screaming that something isn't right. But my heart, it's still holding on to the Ethan I fell in love with, the one who looked at me like I hung the moon and stars. What would you do if your fiance let his family treat you like this and then got mad at you for standing up for yourself? Am I crazy for even considering staying? Or am I giving up too easily on something that could be great if we just work through this rough patch? I'm supposed to be editing photos right now, but instead I'm sitting here staring at my engagement ring, wondering if it represents a future full of love or a lifetime of trying to prove my worth to people who will never truly accept me. Help me, internet strangers. What the hell do I do now?